So I just want to start off and give you a bit of advice. Okay, so first of all, you need to be intelligent. Why do you need to be intelligent? Because you need to get a good job, you need to get a good degree to get a good job to earn good money. And that way you can be successful. And don't moan about it, because that's just the reality, so you have to accept it. That's the reality that we live in today, so just accept it and stop moaning about it, okay? So now I want you to take that advice, and I want you to leave it over here, okay? So leave it over there for the moment. And now I'm going to talk about social constructionism. So what if I told you that we can create our own reality? We can construct the reality for ourselves, okay? So we can construct this ourselves through the concept of social constructionism. So what is it? Social constructionism, it's a mental creation, the fact that reality is everything, it's just in our mind, it's created. The only reason we call this a bottle, or the only reason we see this as a bottle is because we call it a bottle. And when we call it a bottle, that means it's subjective. So there is no objective truth. There is only subjectivity. Because by calling it a bottle, that means we don't call it other things. I visit Berlin, I have a great time, I come back. The reality for Berlin is how I see it, what I experience. Each and every interpretation or experience of what you experience is true to yourself and unique to yourself. We can't experience everything because that's impossible. So they are realities created for us, okay? So how are these realities created for us? Through conversation. People who haven't been to Berlin before, they ask Sinead, what's Berlin like? She tells them, they read on the media, they listen to, they look at films, see books, and the reality is created for them. For example, I looked at the film The Beach. I loved it, Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought it was great, and I heard that this beach was real, and I was like, this is great. So I looked it up on the internet, and it's Maya Bay. It's in Thailand, so I thought it was amazing. Then I actually spoken to people who were in Thailand and visited. So the reality for me, that was constructed for me without me experiencing, was this. This is what it looked like, and this is what it was, okay? So if I had never been there before, then the reality would still be like that. But unfortunately, I actually visited, and this is what it looked like, okay? That rock in the middle was never there. That was superimposed. My friends never actually told me that, and the internet didn't say it either. When I arrived, the tide was out, and when the tide is out, it looks absolutely awful. So basically, the reality, if I had never visited there, the reality for me would be completely separate, okay? So, moving on. Number one, on social constructionism, we take a critical stance for taken for granted knowledge. So if you lived all those years ago where the world was flat, you would have believed that you would fall off the edge of the world. Why? Because the top scientists then told you that. So you'd be walking around and you wouldn't even question it. The reality was the world was flat, and if anyone thought that it wasn't flat, you'd think they're absolutely crazy. You wouldn't even mention it. And I suppose the reality for that is we socially construct categories like that, which are I suppose that we believe. So say gender, for example. We humans split humans into two categories, men and women. So why not split it between short and tall? We're doing that based on one sectional organ, okay? So the largest organ of the body is actually the skin, and people have different colored skin. So why not separate us between black and white? But I can hear you thinking, well, there's procreation, so that's a fair enough point. We have to, but why is procreation important? We're told it is, but why? Because the continuation of the human race, that's really important, But hands up, who here has children? Okay, now hands down. Now, when you had a child, was your motivation for the continuation of the human race? I don't think it was, okay? And I doubt in the history of the world that anyone who had a baby for the continuation of the human race. But that's the reason we're told. That's why procreation is important. But when you actually peel it all back, is it actually important? I'd really question whether it is. Now, you could say the same for music. Music is music. No matter where you listen to music, it's music. But we socially construct these categories to put music into. But who's to say in the nature of music that we should do that? But we do it for convenience purposes. You go into a store and you want to listen to a different type of music, or you want to listen to a different type of radio station, and that's fine, because no one has a problem with that. No one's affected. But when you do something like that with gender, people are affected, because people can be oppressed. Now, as we said, humans constructed humans into two categories, men and women. So that means, and today, years and years ago, in Ireland, you couldn't vote. Why? Because you were put into that category of being a woman. You can't be a priest today because you're a woman. you have to quit your job when you got married because you're a woman. So those categories that we put ourselves into are all made by ourselves. It's all constructed through reality, and that's the reality back then is one thing, and now, because we challenged that and because we questioned it, reality has changed. So it's just proof that we do change reality, and reality is created by us and the society we live in. Just like the marriage referendum. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Why? Oh, it's been like that for thousands of years. Okay, but that's because people were living for years and years, and they decided to put it's a socially constructed concept. And back then, I suppose nobody ever thought to put a man or a woman together. Just like in 1,000 years' time, we're going to look back and say, well, of course, same-sex couples get married. That's ridiculous. It's been like that for thousands of years. So it's just another socially constructed concept. Now, the second thing to think about is all ways of understanding are contextually relative. So it all depends on time and where you are. For example, what a child... If you were bold in a school 50 years ago, you get whipped. That was just the reality. That's what to do. When you're bold, it means you get beaten. And that's what you're meant to do as a teacher and what you expected as a child. That was the reality for you. But now, because we've questioned that, because we've moved on in time, we have a completely different reality, completely different, look on things of how we should treat children when they do different things. Just like... homosexuality is accepted now. It's just, everyday normal thing. But if you live in Uganda, it's completely opposite. So where you live and when you live there is extremely important. Now, a very interesting point is knowledge and social action, they go together. So when we construct a problem, for example, alcoholism, I believe it will always be a problem. But back before the temperance movement or prohibition, we saw alcoholism as, it's all your fault, you're completely blameworthy, it's your choice. So therefore, that was the problem constructed. Now, when a problem is constructed, or just a concept, an action follows from that. So the action that followed from that was imprisonment, or being arrested, or whatever it was. So therefore, when you have one construction of a problem, another action follows. Now, these days, the medical model / disease model is used for alcoholism a lot. Whether you agree with it or not, let's just use it as an example. So it's an addiction. It's not your fault. There's circumstances that lead to that. Now, when you construct a problem one way, it leads to another action, and that action is rehabilitation and trying to overcome problems through therapy. So basically, it's very important to remember that the way we construct things, and these are just constructed, as I said, contextually, it leads to certain actions. Homosexuality in Ireland, it was constructed. Well, now it's just a concept. Now it's just everyday. You're like me and you. It's the same thing. But back then, it was constructed as a problem. So the action that followed that was criminalization. So we have to be very careful how we actually construct different things and whether we construct them as problems or not. So just be. When you construct something, realize that a certain action will always follow. Now, how are these realities sustained? They're sustained through conversation, through the media, through word of mouth. There's more things that you haven't experienced than you have experienced, but I'm sure everyone has lots of opinions of things that they haven't experienced. And how do you get those realities in your head? It's through conversation, it's through reading, it's through looking at films, and it's through looking at media. And the most important thing is language in this, because the language we use is extremely important in how we construct our reality. Our reality is we construct reality based on the language we used. So different ways of talking construct different ways of realities depending on the language we use. Because as I said with the bottle, when we call it one thing, that means we're not calling it another. So there's 100% subjectivity there. So for any situation, multiple descriptions are usually possible, okay? So I'm going to read out a quote. I do have the reference if you want it after. So it's like, I will use words to represent what is in my mind and transfer the meaning to you so that you will understand the meaning I intend. When we talk about disability. Now, what is disability? Disability is another socially constructed concept, but it's very important when we use the word disability because it's extremely stigmatizing, it's extremely debilitating, describing someone with a disability. And I suppose people say, well, Sinead's small, so she's got a disability. Why is it a disability? Because she can't do what we do. So by virtue of being in the majority, we think it's okay to label someone as disabled. But there's a million things that I can't do, but he won't call me disabled. So this is an absolutely lovely painting by Andy Warhol, or a piece of art, some might say. Now, Andy Warhol has dyslexia, and dyslexia is described as a disability. It's actually on dyslexia.ie. It's described as a disability. Get disability support. Now, because Andy Warhol can't read or write as well as the rest of us, that means he's disabled. But he can create this piece of art, but he can't call you disabled, okay? And we constructed this world where money is extremely important. We're getting jobs. Reading and writing are very important. Let's be honest, they're very important to get jobs, to earn money. And we place a huge amount of emphasis and importance on those things that earn money. So therefore, that is seen as able, that is seen as the norm, and that is constructed as the reality. Now, if paintings were to earn the same money, and if we constructed a society where they were very lucrative, then the people who can't draw or paint very well, they would be called disabled. So if you imagine a scenario, does Rob want to come play football? No, he's disabled. First question, what's wrong with him? Well, he's in a wheelchair. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Does your granddad want to come? No, he's disabled. What's wrong with him? Well, he's just 95, so he can't play. But you wouldn't call him disabled. So by virtue of being different, people are called disabled. My mother can't turn on the television, but I'm not going to call her disabled, even though the majority, I'd say everyone in this room, I actually came into her last night. She was nearly crying. She wanted to watch the film, and she couldn't turn the television on because we got this new UPC thing. Anyway, so everyone in this room, I'd say, could turn the television on, but I'm not going to call my mother disabled by virtue of being in the majority, okay? So now, I know I'm over time, but the last component is how discourse become dominant. So a discourse asserts a preferred version of the world. So discourse, say, for example, the role of women, okay? So it's one that disqualifies and excludes competing versions, okay? So the role of women in Ireland, suppose in the 1930s was they should be in the kitchen, they should not get jobs, and they should be in the home and look after the kids. Now that's what was said, and when it's said, you just kind of, and it's not challenged, it just becomes the reality. That's the way it is. How many times have you heard your mother or granny say, that's just the way it was back then, that was the reality, okay? And so much so that it was enshrined in our constitution that women should not neglect their economic necessities, or not neglect their home duties for economic necessity. And that is still in our constitution, okay? So be very careful how these certain realities, if they go unchallenged and if they go unquestioned, they can go as far as being in a country's constitution. Now, that means there's a huge amount of power there. So those with dominant discourses have huge amount of power. So if you imagine the Catholic Church back then and Magdalen laundries, the Catholic Church were closely aligned to the state. They even had a special place within the Constitution, as described by De Valera. Okay? So whatever the Catholic Church said, often that was just the way it was, and it didn't go questioned. So their voice became very powerful, and that became the reality. So Magdalen laundries, those women, unmarried women who had children, okay? Those unmarried women who had children, their babies were called illegitimate. So what a stigmatizing and absolutely horrifying word to describe a baby. But because those in power, they said it, it was accepted as the reality. And then that discourse became powerful, and that became real for everyone. And those marginalized voices of the women, the mothers of those babies, they became marginalized. And as a result of their voices being marginalized, they, as human beings, were marginalized and treated as subhuman. So always remember, those powerful voices, when there's a powerful voice, that means there's a marginalized voice. And not always, but often, those marginalized voices often become marginalized people. Okay? So, going back to my advice, we'll bring my advice back over here, okay? So, we've got intelligence, we have to be intelligent. But what is intelligence? We've constructed a society where academic intelligence is intelligence. Geez, John got 600 points. Geez, he's very intelligent. I couldn't, but someone could disassemble and reassemble a car engine in 20 minutes. You'd say he's a great mechanic, but you'd never say he's intelligent, because we've constructed a world where, because academia leads to jobs and leads to earning money, that is intelligence. But there's loads of different types of intelligence. But when you're a child and you hear John did great in his college exams, he's very intelligent, you just associate intelligence with academia, and you don't associate with anything else. Just like I actually have a friend who got 600 points, and he did arts. And Jesus, what are you doing arts? You can get a good degree, you know. What's a good degree? A good degree is a degree that you want to use. Arts is the best degree in the world if you want to be a teacher, and that's what he wanted to be. And I've experienced the stigma of doing arts. I've in the toilets, just above the toilet roll, it says arts degree. So, but it's not seen as a good degree because it doesn't earn good money. But if you want to be a teacher, it's the best degree. You couldn't get a better degree in the world to do. So if you want to get a good job, what's a good job? Geez, we'll earn good money. A good job for you is a job that you enjoy, a job that you love, not a job that earns a lot of money. But what's good money? Good money is what you want it to be. It's if you really want to earn millions, then a teacher might be a good job. But if you were just happy to enjoy a job and earn, I suppose, enough money to live on and have great summers, then be a teacher. And that, as I said before, you need all that for success. But what is success? Geez, Tom's set up his own company there. He owns 6 bars in New York. He's very successful. That's because we associate success with money. I know a Capuchin monk who dedicated every single day of his life since 1969 to serving the homeless. I've never heard anyone going, geez, he's very successful. Now that to me is admirable. That is success. That is successful. Success is all relative to you. So absolutely question everything that you hear as a reality, because you can construct your own reality. So think critically, question everything. It doesn't mean, just because I'm on a stage saying something, doesn't mean it's right. You have to question it. That's the whole thing of power. You think because someone is on a stage, that means it's more important than your opinion up there, and it's absolutely not. But I would encourage you to embrace the concept. So think it critically, question everything, and lastly, just do more of what makes you happy.